everybody, welcome back to Record of Random Pages. My name is Natalie, and today I have my November TBR. So I'm still kind of trying to figure out what the perfect amount of books to read in a month right now with school is. And I think honestly it's just going to vary from month to month, taking into account what I'm doing in other classes, what my workload's like, and also if I'm reading any books for English. November, I don't think I'm going to be reading really any books. I have a book I'm finishing up, but I'll be finishing it up within the first few days of the month. And I think for most of September they'll just be short stories, so I'm hoping that's not too bad. So I just have about 7 books to chat through and put on my TBR today. First book is Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, which is one that blew up a few years ago, maybe 2 years ago. I think it was in 2019. It just got so popular. Last year the second book came out, and then I'm assuming the third book's coming out this year, but I don't actually know. I don't know a whole lot about this book, but basically the phrase that everyone uses to describe it is lesbian necromancers in space, which I mean just sounds awesome. And so I think it's kind of like an enemies story and following Gideon and Hera, who were enemies once, and it's a whole convoluted thing. And I've heard this book is very confusing, but I'm really excited to try it and to give it a go. A book that I'm really excited to read and that it's kind of carrying the spooky season vibes into November is Night Film by Marisha Pessl, and this is a thriller and it's told in mixed media format, which I think will be really cool, although it is kind of chunky. In this book we're following the daughter of some famous horror filmmaker and her death was ruled as a suicide, but this guy doesn't believe that it is and decides to investigate into her death. I've heard mixed things about this book, some good and then some things like, oh, well, it's good for most of it, but it drags on for a bit too long. So I'm a bit nervous about that, but I'm really excited for the mixed media element of it, and I hope it's going to be a really fun read. A bit of a shorter one to balance out those two bigger reads is Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas, which is another one that has very mixed reviews. So in this book, we're following a student, I forget what her name is, who goes to Catherine House. Now, Catherine House is like this college university type thing where basically for 3 years, I think it is, kids come to this house, well, kids, college student type age type people, and for the 3 years that they're there, they have no connection to the outside world, and they're just solely focused on what's happening at Catherine House. But when they leave Catherine House, they will be like the most successful people in the world. But so obviously the catch is for 3 years you have to leave your outside life completely behind. They're not allowed to talk about where they're from, their family, or anything. No contact with the outside world. And so we're following our main character's story as she goes to Catherine House, and then tragedy is going to strike, I think. And I'm really excited to read this. I think I read the first chapter of it for another video I was doing, but I canceled that video, so we don't need to get into that. But I'm excited to read this. I've heard mixed things about it, but I think it's going to be fun and exciting. So yes, I am a bit nervous though because of all the mixed things I've heard, and I think it's just going to be very weird. The winter time just feels like this time to be reading epic fantasy books. So in November, I'm going to be trying to finish out the Mistborn Era 2 trilogy, or I guess it's not a trilogy, there's still a 4th book coming, but that's not coming out till next year. So I'm going to be trying to reading Shadows of Self and The Bands of Mourning by Brandy Sandy, and they're 2 thicker ones, but I'm hoping to read them both, which is maybe a bit ambitious, but we'll see, because my goal is to read these 2 this month and then Warbreaker next month, so in 2022 I can start tackling the Stormlight Archives, which are even bigger, so. But so, I absolutely love Brandon Sanderson's stories and world, and the Cosmere is fabulous. Well, Mistborn Era 2, the first book I read, wasn't my favorite Brandon Sanderson book of all time. Just the Wild West vibes just weren't my favorite thing, but that's just because I don't love Western stories. I still think it was a really well-done book, and I'm excited to see where this trilogy is going to go. But those are 2 very big books, but we'll see. One that kind of is merging spooky and also fantasy to create this dark fantasy book that I'm really intimidated by, but also very curious by, is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is one that I've heard a lot of things about, also some mixed feelings on this book. But so in this book we're following Alex Stern, who has been able to see ghosts her entire life, and then she gets recruited to go to Yale, but the catch is she has to manage the activities and dealings of the secret societies of Yale. And so it's just following all the sinister things Alex encounters as she's looking after these societies. So I've heard that this one is very gruesome and it has a lot of trigger warnings, so I'm kind of scared about this one, but I've also heard such good things about it. I've had mixed experiences with Leigh Bardugo in the past. I didn't love the Shadow and Bone trilogy, but I adore the Six of Crows duology, so I'm interested to see how her adult work will do. And the only thing I'm a bit nervous about is that this is supposed to be like a 9-book series, and this came out like 2 years ago, and I don't think there's any news on the second book, so I'm a bit concerned about that. So before we talk about the final book on my TBR, I just have a quick few other things that I'm going to try to read. First off, mainly, I'm still trying to work through the Caraval series so I can read Once Upon a Broken Heart. I'm almost done with Caraval, so I'll probably jump into Legendary pretty soon, and then Finale. So that's just that. And then I'm not quite sure what my classic for the month is going to be. I'm still kind of trying to figure that out, debating, deciding. So I guess we'll just have to wait for my wrap-up to see that. But I have one final book to add to this TBR, and I'm not gonna lie, it's one I am scared of. I think about the fact that I want to read this book, this series, and I'm just so intimidated by it. But I want to start it in November, and there is a very specific reason for that. And that book is The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan, which is the first book in the Wheel of Time series, which is one of the longest fantasy series ever. It's 15 books long, written by 2 authors. Robert Jordan wrote it until he passed away, and then Brandon Sanderson finished up the final few books. And this is a big series. Like, it's not just long, the books are pretty big, and it's a beloved fantasy series. It's so many people's favorite series. It's the series that got so many people into reading fantasy, and I'm intimidated by it. So the reason I want to read it is that the Amazon Wheel of Time show is coming out in late November, I want to say. And so I want to start reading the books because I'm interested in the show. I believe the first season of the show is only based off of the first 2 books. So my plan is kind of to read the first 2 or 3 books, then watch the show, and still continue to read on the series. So kind of my thought process is for the next 14 months, I'll just try to do a book a month and just try to get through them that way. I mean, I'm so excited to read the series just because I've heard so many great things about it, but I've also heard, like, the series has its downfalls. There's a part of the series that's considered to be this, like, slog that's, like, not good books, and it's hard to get through, but like it's worth it because the series is good. So I am just intimidated by it, but I'm ready to tackle this series. Something I'm trying to be conscious of is how many epic fantasy series I am reading at a time, because I don't have a very good memory, especially when it comes to books, which can make it hard to be a reader who loves series sometimes. That's why I'm kind of hoping to finish off most of the Cosmere and then to start the Wheel of Time, get a few books into that before going back to the Cosmere, and just have those 2 series going for a bit. I'm trying to figure it all out in my brain because there is another fantasy series I really want to read. I really want to read The Realm of the Elderling by Robin Hall, but I think right now Wheel of Time is a bit of higher priority because of the Amazon TV show, and I don't want to have Realm of the Elderlings, Wheel of Time, and Cosmere going on at the same time. I think 3 is just a bit too many, so I'm compromising by cutting down by 2. And maybe once I finish the Cosmere, I'll start The Realm of the Elderlings. So that's kind of my plan. I'm going to start the Wheel of Time in November. I'm really intimidated by it, but I'm also really excited. I just hope it's going to be a great book and lots of fun. I also am slightly less intimidated by the Wheel of Time than I have been previously, because I heard that Robert Jordan is an author who likes to repeat himself and will remind you of important factors of the book, which some people find tedious, but I think for a reader like me who has a very short-term memory, will be very good for me and help me remember all of the things in the book and help me not get as lost. So those are my reading plans for November. Maybe it's a lot, maybe it's kind of ambitious. We'll see. So obviously I still need to figure out what classic I'm going to read. And then, as always, if I finish my TBR early, I'll either get books out of the library or hopefully work on reading books I already own, because that is a serious problem I have, and I need to get on that stat pronto. All the action. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Down below you'll find links to all of the books I talked about, as well as my bookstagram and my Goodreads if you want to follow me there. Subscribe to see more content from me, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!